What is up, everybody? I'm John Newman. This is Jordan Newman, father and son. This is Hello Newman's Sports Podcast, episode 6. Holy crap, man. It's been a month and a half. We do these every Tuesday at 8 p.m. live, but if you don't catch us live, you can download the episode on any syndicated podcast platform. We're on most of them. As we build up a little momentum with the show, which is starting to happen. We're appreciative of that fact. And so we're going to go into our first story. A little bit is your news week this week. Then the past week, Lewd-Shaun Watson is the headline this week. 14 lawsuits pertaining to unscrupulous behavior towards women. When this story first broke, Jordan, I thought that this was sort of, and I think you did too, because we talked about it, was Houston sort of like planning the story, as crazy as that might sound, or embellishing something. But 14 of them now. His lawyer, Deshaun's lawyer, says they're all false and fabricated. That seems like a lot. 14. Stranger things have happened. Whenever you hear about these kind of accusations, I think back to the going back to a little bit, the Duke lacrosse team accusations, which turned out to be false. But you never know, and not good. Not a good off season for Deshaun. First saying he basically wanted out, which I don't blame him with what Houston's doing there, which is, your guess is as good as mine. But this definitely not helping his case. And, really, when you think about it, if Houston wanted to trade him, Jordan, his stock is right now at an all-time low.
You can't. They're not going to trade him now. I think that it's just such an odd situation. I think, like you said, early on, 4 or 5 people, it definitely, to me, smelled like something. The Texans didn't want to trade him and was looking for a way to keep him there. And it smelled fishy. It looks odd. But once you get up past kind of double digits, that's a lot of coordination to have to do. And not all these women are connected to the same attorney or lawyer. So it is starting to kind of pile up and become a little bit questionable. I don't want to make any judgments either way, but I think either way this situation goes now, it's going to be sticky. If it comes back, he didn't do anything. I think the Texans are probably somewhat involved, and I think that could be messy on that hand. And if, unfortunately, if it were true, he's got issues he needs to work on, and I think that would be is going to kind of put a big monkey wrench in the future. I don't really know what happens if, God forbid it were to be true. But I think either way now, this whole situation's become so messy that either outcome, there's going to be some figuring out needing to be done. I think it's a mess at this point. And with the number of cases that if it is false, something's behind it. There's some coordination. And if it is true, there's some serious looking need to be done at Deshaun Watson, and kind of a question of how it got by for so long. But I think either way, it's messy. And I think teams now, if you like a guy, in Deshaun Watson, it becomes a question of not just, he can play, but a character issue. If any of this is somewhat true, he's clearly not kind of the guy that's been presented. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's still yet to kind of come down from this. And I know Deshaun himself hasn't said much, from his initial thing, which to me, I understand he's probably being advised not to say much, but it's like eerily quiet from that side. And you really haven't heard anything from anyone on that side. So it's just very odd time right now. And it just seems every day it's just a new person coming forward. So,
yeah, I mean, the league's looking into this. They can act on disciplinary. They may suspend him if things get really bad. And so the Texans might be without Watson, without him being traded or sitting out. The league may have to suspend him. And so it looks like, one way or the other, he may have played his last time in Houston. And they may not even get much for him when they just sort of move on. Maybe he serves a suspension, deals with the legal fallout. And
well, it'll be
fallout.
interesting even if any bits of it are true, if not as big of a magnitude as it looks now, but if some of it comes out as true, it's still kind of an odd situation where you do have a guy that has had those kind of issues. So I think, and then bringing that guy, if you were to still trade him into a new locker room, it might be a bit odd to have someone that has kind of those accusations. And, we don't know if any of it's true or whatnot, but if any of it is, or there's anything, I think it can take a real shot of out of someone's leadership, just from other guys in the locker room, having a guy that has those kind of odd, not very bad accusations against them. But, you kind of got to let whatever happens in the process happen. But just from right now, this standpoint, it's just there's not really a clear path out of this where no one gets hurt. So
I think the bloom's off the rose. And think about this, Jordan. The start of football season last year, this guy was talked about as an elite quarterback. You could build your franchise around him. And it's not that far off from that. Look where we are now. It's just insane how, it was always like, oh, Deshaun's way better than Dak Prescott. They're not even close other than being an African-American quarterback. Dak is going to get way too much money and be overpaid. He's not as good as Deshaun, and look, the table sort of turned here. Those two always have kind of been compared to each other, rightfully or wrongfully, depending on what way you think. And like now, they're just really going in opposite directions. And I don't know how this thing ends. It's like a soap opera.
It'll be interesting either way, because if it happens that it's not true, there's just so much fallout, I think, that falls on the Texans, and just an organization kind of pulling so hard to kind of defame their own guy. I think that alone would be such a massive story. And as the other way of if Watson really is kind of dealing with those kind of issues. So I think either way, there's some serious stuff that either way, whatever way, if it's true or not true, something, seriously wrong went both ways.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I don't know if he ever plays for the Houston Texans again.
No, I don't. Yeah,
I'd be very surprised how that would.
I don't think he would have before this, and I think this is.
And if this is untrue, honestly, I put myself in their place. If these are falsehoods and falsified things, I would countersue these people that are besmirching my name for slander, libel, whatever my legal counsel thinks we can. I don't care if they're nobodies on the.
Well, I think that's the
point
thing,
that my name is being dragged through the mud, and
that's the thing, is if it does come out that it's not true, it is super unfortunate, because there's still always, when you look up Deshaun Watson, even if it's not true, it's gonna come up, and that's something you really can't get rid of. And it's it's not fair to someone, if it didn't happen, to have that kind of cloud. But I just think it'll be, like you said, if it does come up not true, I think there's something behind. I don't think there's just random accusations or people in Houston trying to get him to stay. I think there's some, whether it's the Texans themselves or some other group, there's some coordination behind it if it were to be not true. I just think that's way too many people. There's way too many, similar accusations for it to, if it were false, to just kind of happen like that.
And some people might be listening to this, Jordan, and say, "What? How could a team like plan a story or do that?" I don't know if it's so much plan a story, but here's what does happen. I think people will agree with this, and you will too. Sometimes when something bad happens, the team might not actually plant the story, but what they can do is, on good terms, they can do some stuff to make sure that the story doesn't get out, or try to do some stuff. Sometimes that's financial. Sometimes it's, hey, you do this for us, we'll do this for you. And all of a sudden, someone's got sweet tickets for a couple years for not saying nothing. If you don't think that happens, you're the same folks that don't think people get paid to play college sports.
It's unfortunate, yeah.
But those stuff happens. So what I think might be happening here is, under good terms, they might really try to squelch this or pay these women off and say, hey, here's, $300,000-$400,000, just let it be. Don't file,
Well, I think not even that. I think there's probably instances of stuff like that or protecting guys. But I think the lawyer, there's kind of the rumor that he is friends and he is close neighbors with the owner of the Texans. And there's just a lot of stuff kind of going around where there's connections. But he's only representing the first, I think, 4 or 5. And that's where I think I was originally, it's definitely some kind of planted thing or it's some kind of push by the organization. But since the kind of the rush of extra accusations, it just they are separate from the initial group. So it's they don't seem connected, and that's kind of what's kind of alarmed me is the initial front was very, seemed phony, and now it's starting to kind of be worrying. And the silence from Deshaun's side is, I know there's not much you can say. It is a little odd to me, at least. It seems like there's a lot of things being said, and you don't really hear much from him.
I'd be screaming from the mountaintop that this is baloney. This is so
well, not
untrue.
even that.
I'm sure the legal counsel's like just
that, and I think you can't go over the top with it just because you're going to hear accusations all the time. But I think just there was an initial statement, and after that, there's been all these added accusations, and he really hasn't come out too much after all the initial or the added ones. So it's just there's a lot of talking and not much really from his side at all.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's definitely going to tarnish his reputation. No matter how this ends, there's going to be people who just, even if he turns out he didn't do it, there's going to be people just say, well, he probably did it, but he got away with it. This is a guy that really before this year was really portrayed as a great citizen. He did a lot of charity work,
and I think that's the sad
he was
thing.
Hurt and to the hospitals and visit. And I'm not saying he didn't do that stuff, but he was really held in this light. And now this is really going to damage that reputation. I don't know how you would come back from this. It's going to be very.
I think it's sad both ways, because if he didn't do it, you know what I mean, it'll always be there, and he didn't deserve to have kind of that cloud. But on the other hand, if it is true, it's extremely sad to have a guy who was able to kind of put himself out there as one way and be completely different, on his own. And I think that's kind of the sad thing, is no matter what outcome is, that there's something was wrong and someone was harmed, through the process. And that's kind of the unfortunate aspect either way.
Yeah, no doubt. If these accusations are true, they're terrible. It's criminal. And there's, young women that lives are affected forever, not just in the moment, but forever. So we'll kind of have to wait and see on this one, see where it goes, where the fallout goes. But kind of talked about that for a while. Let's go to a different league. And the question right here is, can the Lakers still win the title? And the reason that question is prominent is now they have both their big guys are down with injury. Anthony Davis and now LeBron. Looks like going to be extended time for LeBron, high ankle sprain. There's two sides to this argument, as is most arguments. There's people say, hey, this actually helps them. These two guys are going to get rest, which they sometimes do even when they're not hurt. Now they're going to be really refreshed. And that's assuming, though, Jordan, that they're going to come back. It's going to assume two things there. Number one, that they're going to win games without them to get decent seeding. And number two, that they're going to come back in time to save the day, if you will. I mean, this question's easily answered. If they don't play, there's no way they win in the title with the rest of the roster. With all due respect to those guys, as good as they actually have played, you're not winning a championship when LeBron and AD are on the shelf. So I guess the first question is, how long are they going to be out for? And, what will happen in the time they're out? Are they going to, they're going to lose some games now. I think that's very apparent. What seeding do they get? And does that seeding matter if they come back? Could they get the 6, 7, or 8 seed and still LeBron and AD, the door opens, they come out on the laser light show, and they win from that spot.
I think you said it. I think that's somewhat what's going to happen. I think the NBA is kind of such a storyline league. I think you're going to see AD and LeBron kind of rest, and they have such a deep team. They've got guys on the team. They'll be probably a lower seed than they are now for sure, but I think they'll still manage to make the playoffs kind of without those two. But I think you'll see it, if they come back, I think there's no doubt they're going to be in the same position they were in before. It's just they both do need to come back. And I think they both have to be fully healthy. I don't think it can be one's healthy and one's kind of dragging their leg, I think that's why they're going to, is I think they'll sit. And I think as long as they lock up that playoff spot, I think they'll sit a bit longer than they normally would or need. And I think the NBA being such a storyline league, I think you're going to have AD and LeBron kind of swoop back in late, save the day, and kind of run through a pretty good West conference and still end up in the finals. I don't really see any other team in the West. And I think the high ankle sprain is tough. It is one of those kind of nagging injuries that doesn't seem to go away. But I think they'll give him the time. And with AD, that's the tough thing is with AD, is if AD comes back, I really think they're going to be fine. But I think if AD's is really a long-term thing, that's when it becomes really in question.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I agree with you here. I don't know if LeBron is at the stage of his career now where he can win this on his own. I think he needs a Robin, or some might even argue a Batman, and he's Robin. Yeah. I think he needs a big guy.
And I think the other issue is that every other team really that's competing for a championship has 2-3 guys at this point, 4 even for some teams. So I think it's not even just him not being able to, is all the league around him started to do what he's done. And there's these kind of super teams, and I don't think any superstar can win alone anymore in the league. That's kind of the NBA as it is. I think even with the Jazz, I think you see playing well. I think that's a team you see during playoff time. You get into those late series with teams and you have those stars take over. And unfortunately, I just don't think they have that star power. And the league just runs so much on the kind of not individual guys, but having those scores and having those great players, that it's just very difficult to see a team really win purely kind of on team play and not really having a superstar kind of lead the way.
Yeah. I don't know. Here's the other thing. If they do miss significant time, whether it's injury, maybe they are healthy and they just don't come back right away and get some extra rest, will they be rusty? Will that too much time off actually do more harm than good? There's a lot of questions. I'm being a Nets guy, from Brooklyn. They're sort of become the de facto favorite with the Lakers being wounded right now. Would be something, man, if the Brooklyn Nets won an NBA championship. I'm not going to lie. I don't follow them every day, day in, day out, but I'll be rocking one of those championship hats nonetheless because it's going to say Brooklyn on it. So, but, we'll see. I mean, everyone is picking Brooklyn and the Lakers in their finals picks, and I've seen some experts pick the Nets. I've seen some experts kind of split down the middle. So, but if one of those two, like you said, don't play, or if both don't play, if these are real, they are real serious injuries, but they don't heal or they don't return from them, they're done for this year. There's no way the rest of that roster runs through the West by themselves. And, so we'll see how this goes as well. And I'm not one to count them out. I think there's, I'm not saying they're not hurt. I just think the timing of it, we'll see. I think they, like you said, and I said, I think they come back kind of like, out of the fog and the save the day, and there'll be some dramatics with that. I'm sure LeBron likes that stuff. Let's be real. I don't think I don't think Anthony Davis cares about dramatics.
I think the NBA loves it too. Yeah. So I think the league itself does a lot to bring views for stuff like that. So I think to promote, you know what I mean, a giant comeback by the league's two biggest. Wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah. Let's stay in the league. Another injury This one to a rookie, but a guy that was really playing well. Finally, a Ball brother that actually can play halfway decent in the NBA. LaMelo was looking really good. And I believe he suffered an arm injury. He's out for the year.
I think he broke his wrist.
Yeah, and he's going to be out for the year. That's it. And, so that sort of opens the door for the other rookies. It's not – I'm going to say this too. I looked at the numbers today, doing show prep. Not a great rookie class overall. You got like 2 or 3 guys, and then really there's a real heavy, Now, some of these guys may develop, 2-3 years down the line. I'm just talking about play this year. I'm not throwing the whole class out for forever. But, last year's class struck me as 10 or 12 deep, all double-digit type of guys. This group, not so much. You got your LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, Wiseman, and Tyrese Halliburton. And then,
Emmanuel Quickly.
From the Knicks. Yep, you're right.
He wasn't an early pick, but he's really been
Nope, you're right. I forgot about him. And but when you compare it to some past years, it's a little thin. So who wins this? Is there any way that LaMelo can still? Did he play enough games where they could give him this and say, well, the other guys, weren't good enough, and we're still gonna, we're not gonna.
Yeah, I think Anthony Edwards would kind of have to really kind of plateau and not do much else that he's been doing. But the projection he's been going, he's really started to take that step. And I think there's a shot, even if LaMelo stays healthy, depending on what Edwards does, he could have overtook him anyway. So I think Edwards kind of runs away with it. I think Quickly's there. I just don't think he has enough star power even. Just Edwards is kind of his own. He was the first pick in the draft, so I think him taking that step and taking a bigger role in Minnesota, he was kind of, I think, on the way to contending for it anyways. And I think unfortunately with LaMelo going down, it kind of just opens the door for him to take it and run away with it.
Yeah, Edwards playing well, actually better than I thought. I was a little concerned that he might not so much be a bust, but definitely not worthy of the number one pick. The guy I really like, and I still like him. He's not playing as well as I thought he was going to coming in, and then that's Wiseman and Golden State. I thought he'd be putting up a little bigger numbers. Again, he's young. It's early. He didn't play hardly any college ball, and so he can develop. I still like him. It's a guy I'm still in on if we're talking about it like that. Like you said, quickly in the Knicks, he wasn't even really supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be Obi Toppin. Yeah. And he's sort of an afterthought. That's crazy,
Well, it's Julius Randle was supposed to be traded and be the second on the bench at some other team, and he's an all-star. So I think that it's a good problem to have, and I think for the Knicks to kind of have Obi Toppin and learn behind a guy like that could be good. But yeah, like you said, the big guy was Obi Toppin. He's the big dunker from Dayton. I think he won Best Player in College that year.
There were some people who argued he should be considered with that number one choice, so and it wasn't to be, but there was talk about at least about. So that tells you what some people thought of him with basketball IQ. I know he's not a rookie. R.J. Barrett's really stepped his game up after a kind of a disappointing rookie year. And that's my point too. I'm using that as a point is sometimes rookie years, they can come back that second year, hit the weight room, learn the game, and come back as a completely different player. I think RJ Barrett is showing that this year. And so some of these guys, like we're talking about, maybe Toppin, Wiseman, that were, not knocking our socks off, they can come in next year and just be a completely different player. And so we'll see. But I think it's now Edwards to lose. You hate to see, I'm not a fan of the Ball dad there, LeVar. I'm better than Michael Jordan, LeVar Ball.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if he contacted New Orleans and said he volunteered to replace his son on the roster because he's probably told him, really, I'm better than LaMelo. And now that he's hurt, why don't you sign me? You won't miss a beat. LeVar,
no, they're in Charlotte.
Charlotte. All right. See,
the wrong brother.
Yeah. I got my Ball brothers
You
mixed
got your
up.
balls twisted.
Yeah, I got my balls twisted. But he's, he strikes me as the type of guy that would do that, just really brash. And
Well, the thing I like kind of with LaMelo is he's kind of pulled away from his father and instead kind of counter things to his dad, where I think Lonzo's kind of, and I think part of it's probably a personality thing, but Lonzo's kind of been the quieter one, where LaMelo's been more of the outspoken and almost pushed back. And I think that's kind of helped him kind of adjust to the league because he is his own guy. He's also, been on all types of different leagues with grown men. So that helps too, is he's not adjusting to seeing, grown men on the court. He's been, playing with other grown people. So
he looks like the best ball in the family right now. And so Lonzo's, been kind of sort of disappointing with the Lakers and the trade, and hasn't even got much better.
Yeah.
So
I think he's still got an opportunity. I think just this next team, he's really got to be a fit. I think, I don't know how many more basketball you do usually get a lot of opportunities, but you do really want to start, that third team. You don't want to be the same problem at that place. So
all right, let's go back to football. Heck of a free agency season. It's not even done yet. I'm rather than go into some of the signings from since last show, which there have been a few. I figured let's do it this way, Jordan. The bulk of the free agency is honestly done. There's a few more guys still out there. And you don't have to just pick one team. You can throw a few. I have a feeling we'll have similar teams anyway, but who won NFL free agency?
I don't know if I'd say they won, but I really like what the Giants did. I think Gettleman really, for what kind of he'd done before and all the questionable moves, he kind of really solidified the kind of what they have moving forward. I think the Kenny Galladay signing was great. I think to me he was the best receiver available, and I think they paid him, and I think that's okay. I think some people complain about the money, but he's a number one receiver, and I think he was clearly the best in the class, and he fills that need of a big play, kind of a possession guy that's going to go up and get the ball that they need for a guy like Daniel Jones. And then I think today signing Adoree Jackson was huge. I think he's kind of an under-the-radar guy that not many people were talking about getting cut, or I don't know if he was cut, he was just a free agent. But that was a huge signing, and I think anywhere he goes would have been a huge upgrade. But for them, because their defense really was good this year.
Number 10 in the league.
Yeah, it wasn't really talked about. So adding a guy like that, just the speed alone on adding on the defense is huge.
Yeah, another under the radar while we're talking about the Giants, Kyle Rudolph, the tight end from the Vikings. I know he's had sort of an up and down career in Minnesota. I still like him.
Well, I like it a lot
with Evan Ingram. Now you got sort of one guy's not playing well. You have a sort of a plan B on their attack and the blocking scheme.
Yeah, they work well together because Evan Ingram doesn't block, and then you have Rudolph, who's one of the better blocking tight ends. So I like it. They've done a lot with the team where they've started to fit guys in good places. It's not really just getting talent anymore. It's kind of making that talent kind of fit, and I like what they've started to do.
Yeah, they added a couple linemen. I'm sure they're going to add more via the draft. Joe Judge is honestly looks like a better coach than I thought he was going to be. So they're moving in the right. They might be. If the season started today and we had to pick division winners, they might be. And as much as I don't want to do it, they might be my pick to win the NFC East right now, at least on paper, before the draft. We still got a draft to watch and see where guys wind up. But I think they've improved the most definitely in that division, and they're one of the winners. I'll give another one. And again, I hate to say this team too, but they did. They went out and spent money this year. I thought they signed the right guys, and that's the Patriots. And I don't know how much better they're going to be, but they're going to be better. I thought keeping Newton was sort of an odd choice, but I'm not sure, Jordan, he's going to be the starter. I don't be surprised they pull off some sort of draft day trade. Maybe Jimmy G comes back.
I think that's the only way Cam isn't the starter. Is I think if they figure out a way to get Garoppolo.
Yeah. Kind of different approach by them. So I'm going to throw them
I like what they did. I didn't love the Cam signing because I think he was a god-awful quarterback last year, but I don't think they're nearly going to use him the same way. I think we talked about it a little bit last episode. But getting Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry and just not really conforming to the rest of the league and kind of saying, we're going to still play our way and force you to adjust to us. And that's very kind of Bill Belichickian. It's just saying, we're not going to drop back and air it out all the time like you want us to. I think he's really building a kind of a run and shoot almost team with Cam Newton, where he can almost like Tim Tebow at Florida, kind of, where he can every play, he's got the option to bowl over 3 guys, or he can, pull it and throw it to any of the receivers they signed. And that's the thing. They didn't sign any huge receiver name-wise, but they're all very speedy guys. And I think we've seen New England survived off not having names. So I think some of the guys might not seem flashy, but for what kind of I think they're going to scheme up there, I think they're perfect fits.
Yeah. Signed Matt Judon from Baltimore, and also another linebacker whose name is escaping my mind right now. But really in multiple positions, they really improved upon. They had the money to do it. Let's be honest with you. When Brady and Gronk left, they took a lot of salary cap with them and freed up some space. They got Newton cheap, as they should, because he didn't earn a raise, and so they're in a good spot where they could do that. We'll see how it works for them. I think Buffalo's still the team to beat. I think Miami, with a good draft, is going to be right there, and if the Jets can retool quickly, they might have something to say about it as well. Another team I'm going to throw into this category too, kind of quietly, is the Chargers. Nothing too crazy, but they beefed up that front line. A front line I didn't think was too terrible to begin with, and they actually made it better. And so now you have a rookie quarterback who now will be a second-year quarterback with more experience, with probably even more time to pick a defense apart. Everything you hear about Herbert is he's a student of the game, and so he's going to probably study more, get better. Now he's going to have more time to use what he learns. I mean, this kid is on a path to arguably be the best quarterback in this class. I think he is right now. I think Joe Burrow is going to have something to say about that. But the way I keep saying San Diego, the way the Chargers are surrounding and building the team around him, it's going to make keep the Bengals honest to do the same thing for Burrow. I think when you look at these two guys, and I love Joe Burrow, but Herbert looks like the more sturdy kind of guy that can take maybe a shot and get up, smile, and get back in the huddle. Burrow's a tough kid too. I'm not saying he isn't, but they're I think one of these teams is doing a better job keeping their guy clean. And it's that's
the main thing is I don't know if they're all mobility is probably a little bit on Herbert's side, but Joe Burrow's not mobile at all. I think the issue is they just had no preparation on the line, and I think that's a tough situation for Burrow to go into. And he played well. It's just it's hard to have your big prize piece sitting back there when you don't really have much in front of him. So I think that's like you said, is you see Herbert had good protection and really had weapons around him and kind of thrived. And I think he was kind of underrated coming in. I think a lot of people like to talk about, he threw a lot of screen passes. He didn't go downfield much. If you watch him play and you watch, what he did, and he did it for 4 years there. He wasn't a 1 year, 2 year wonder. He developed there and he did grow there. So I think there's a lot to say about quarterbacks that stay in college. And I think that's the tough is judging, the talent versus, how, have they done it, the experience. But I think he showed the good mix of both. And I think that's where, it's just a good mix to have that both. And then to protect him, I think he's in a good situation. And I think that division will be really interesting because I think the two other teams, not the Chiefs, but I think the Broncos and the Raiders kind of took a step back. Yep. I think that division's really looking like it's going to be the Chiefs and Chargers for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was about to say that. So we're thinking along the same lines. And One team that didn't win free agency this year is our boys in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Truthfully, anybody they kept was already on the team. They just redid a deal. They're strapped up against the cap. Today they lose Steven Nelson because they signed Schuster. And I like Juju, but to me, the cornerback position was more of a need than the wide receiver. I would have liked to keep them both. Don't get me wrong. But, man, I mean, unless they know something, I don't.
Disagree. I keep Juju. I think you have to keep Juju on an $8 million contract. It's just way too cheap to kind of tell him no. I think it stinks to get rid of a guy like Steven Nelson, who's been good and who's really fit well. But I think when you sign a guy like Cam Sutton earlier in free agency, it's tough to kind of break your back to sign another corner who's kind of overshadow the guy you signed earlier. So I think, unfortunately, they had to cut him. But I think just in general, Pittsburgh, they've brought in no one new, and they've really just kind of shed guys. So I think in true Pittsburgh fashion, we're going to have to wait for the draft and hope, we make some big picks. It's just, it is a little bit disappointing because there was, that hope of the restructure from Ben and whatnot. And it just seems like we took a lot more of a loss. But I think the guys they have replacing some of the linemen they let go might be okay. I like Dotson and I like Okafor a lot. So I think not signing a Villanueva's completely fine. He was bad. I think it stinks to lose Vince Williams. I think he's a big glue guy on the defense, but you did bring in Avery Williamson, who I think is a bit younger, a bit faster, and is a good run stopper. So it is tough, but I think when you look at what they've lost, they do, in the way Pittsburgh's done it, is they bring it kind of within the system, is they kind of have those guys. Dupree, you have Alex Highsmith. It's just the one I really didn't like and doesn't make sense to me is Mike Hilton. Right. He's kind of a guy, they don't have a guy ready to kind of fill his spot. And even if you
think it's Cam Sutton, maybe.
But even if you did, he's kind of a guy you can't really replace. He's, he leads the league and pretty much pressures at corner. He leads the league at sacks from corner. And he's arguably one of the best defenders at slot corner. And it's hard to justify not getting rid of him, but not bringing him back.
That was an undrafted free agent.
And to go kind of in division to the Bengals, it's just to a team that's really not a contender. Is a little confusing because they couldn't have offered a playoff spot or really a hope of a championship. So it's hard to swallow that one just because he fit well and he was kind of that attitude. But as it usually is in Pittsburgh, you kind of have to trust what they're going to do in the draft, and it's worked out so far. So. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I want to shout out Eric Stefano, who made a comment they still should be in San Diego, referring to the Chargers. I agree, and they'll always sort of be like the San Diego Chargers to me. I know they're not there, but my mind still thinks they are, and so maybe that's a sign they should be. But let's talk a little bit.
Right before the Raiders, I think, are another team who's similar to Pittsburgh. Brought it. I really loved the Ngakoue signing. I thought that was huge, but they pretty much cut the rest of their line. Rodney Hudson, cutting a guy like Rodney Hudson, who's been your center.
They traded him.
Oh yeah, well they were gonna cut him, and then they got a third for him. But still, he's given up 10 sacks in the last 10 years. Yeah. It's just that's kind of give up on that line. They're kind of trending in the wrong direction, and it's.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, man. I think that division's now with two teams. Yeah. And obviously the Chiefs are the cream of the crop. I mean, the Chargers probably not going to win the division, but they might, if they split with Kansas City or even sweep with Kansas City, they won last year one game. So
the Chiefs kind of dumped their line as well and kind of switched stuff up. And I think we saw in the Super Bowl with having as many linemen hurt as they did, I think they're still vulnerable. If the Chargers get a legitimate pass rush, I think their offense can really take a step. I think Herbert can really be that guy. I don't think he is Mahomes at all, but I think he's a guy that can do enough with a better defense in not San Diego, but a better defense there than the Chiefs have. I think it's going to be an exciting division. I think you're going to see a lot of points for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Let's stay in football. We've hit really all the topics I scheduled. We're at about the 40-minute mark. Let's just we don't necessarily have to go the hour, but you watched a little bit of the pro day or kept a little more tabs on it than me. I know Kyle Pitts, the tight end, ran
4.46,
4.46 40. Honestly, Jordan, and I said this before the 40, honestly, so this just enhances it. He honestly might be the best player in this draft, and that includes Trevor Lawrence. Obviously we know quarterback values jump them ahead of other positions. But if you're looking for the best game-changing type player in this draft, it might be Kyle Pitts. And I tell you what, if I'm the first team that don't need a quarterback in this draft, you have to really take a serious look at Kyle Pitts and say, can we let a guy that this is kind of this generational talent, he's sort of a wide receiver playing tight end type of player who's a big dude too. It's not like he's a little fast tight end. He's a big fast tight end. I don't know how you pass that talent up, especially unless you already have a tight end.
I think even if you do, it's one of those situations, like you said, he's such a talent that and the league really isn't full of great tight ends anyways. It's kind of if you have an okay tight end, that's something you almost look to upgrade anyways.
He's a guy I would consider, if I'm on the down low, too low, I'm considering moving up. If he's on the board and someone's picking, I'm calling him and saying, hey, what we want to pick. What do we got to do here? I think he's arguably the best player in this draft when you just talk about football players. And we ain't gonna get him where we are, but I'd love to get him. And I think he's just everything. I haven't heard much bad about him. I mean, I was listening to another show today, and the analyst, I forgot who it was, but the one asked the other one, like, who would you compare him to, like, as a tight end? And he goes, man, I don't know. He's that good. Like, I don't know if I would. I think he might be draft stock-wise the best tight end we've had in a long time. The guy that kind of I think about, and I noticed, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. People are going to say, wow, that's heady. I just think Tony Gonzalez type of
See, no, I disagree. I don't see him like that. He's more, to me, similar to Darren Waller. That style, he's very big and very fast. But to me, it's much more polished than Darren Waller. That's the big difference. Is he looks through his routes, he looks like a number one receiver until you realize he's 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds running a 4.4 at you. So I think there's no one really to compare him to. He runs faster than most receivers do, and he's big. He's not a small tight end, and he's not probably a great blocker, but I think that's you're not worried about his blocking when you take him. I just think the 4.46 solidified, not just watching him and seeing the crazy plays he makes, but now you have that track speed on paper, which is kind of nuts. And
maybe, who does that too? The Jets, right?
Yeah.
If they're going to keep Darnold and give him another chance, if I'm the Jets at 2, I know they've been rumored to pick a lineman to help Darnold, and I get that. But man, it would be tempting at 2 if I'm the Jets with Pitts sitting right there.
See, I think if they were to go Pitts, I think they trade back 3, 4. Around there, because I think
you risk maybe not even getting him too. You got to be careful.
But I think that number 2 pick, I think if they were to trade, I think whoever's trading up, it's going to be Zach Wilson.
Quarterback. So, and what? Speaking of the quarterback class, you brought up a great point with Herbert when we were talking earlier. Guys who stay in college 4 years seem to translate better to the NFL, and we don't really have many of that is in the quarterback position. Lawrence is probably the closest thing, and he hasn't stayed even 4 years. And there's some questions about him. There's some people that don't think he's going to be. That's what a lot of people.
That's what a lot of it. That's just the late draft day stuff. Lawrence is the greatest quarterback prospect we've probably ever seen. He would have likely been the first pick coming out of high school. I think a lot of the talk you hear with Zach Wilson, the quarterback class to me outside of Lawrence is very, very unspectacular. There's no one that stands out.
A lot of people falling in love with Trey Lance.
That's who I would say.
And he's played literally one game, like one great game, and a lot of people are just projecting him.
I like, but that's the thing is it's tough, but the talent is you watch his pro day, some of the throws he makes are insane, and you hate doing the Mahomes comparison thing. It's just the throws he makes are some of the better throws. He's not a guy I think you draft early and you plug and play at all. I think that would be a very bad situation. But I think he's a guy you get a good situation where he can learn. I think that's a guy where a coach, like you said, he hasn't played much. A coach it's raw. It's almost like Play-Doh. You can kind of morph him into your kind of guy. Hasn't almost been corrupted, too much beforehand.
Well, the Steelers are rumored to like him. I don't think they're going to be in position to get him. But at least on their draft board, the rumor is that he's someone they would love to acquire, and they're looking at. When you look at next year's quarterback class, all the draft analysts are saying it's actually very poor and not very good. And so I think what's going to happen because of that, Jordan, is these guys this year are going to go higher because teams are going to be like, there's not a lot in the bank coming for next year. We're going to have to overdraft somebody and take a shot on one of these guys. Now, you never know. Things can change. Guys can come out of nowhere sort of thing. A year ago today, we weren't talking about Trey Lance.
Being, but even the year before, Joe Burrow was no one thought he was going to be that guy.
So right now, I know the draft and, the draft heads are saying the 2022 quarterback class is terrible or nothing stands out. But again, a lot can change between now and then. But what's going to happen is I think you're going to see a big run on quarterbacks this year because people are going to believe that there's not anything coming.
And it's just there's really nothing spectacular. I think you look at even Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, to me they're very similar. I think they benefited from being in great programs and having a great offense around them. I think they can be good in the NFL, but I don't think those are guys you look at as first round, guys you put you don't put your team on those guys' backs. And I just think, like you said, teams are going to reach because they look at those gaudy numbers and you see what Mac Jones and Trask did and took those teams deep. But I think you have to understand there's so much talent around them. And I don't think I think they did a lot to make those teams good, but I don't think they were the pure reason that they were. And
I agree with you. And again, Steelers going back to they're rumored to like both of those guys. I'm hoping as much as I want the next quarterback, that I don't think either one of them's it, and I don't want them being picked.
I know even seeing a couple of clips from like Mac Jones's pro day where even he just doesn't have that same flash, that same arm ability as I think the other guys in the draft. And I think that's even why people are kind of latching on to Zach Wilson is because he's kind of the opposite, is he has that flash. He's got the big arm. He can kind of move around, but I think a lot of that's just that late hype and wanting to cling on to a quarterback to say, he's the guy, he's going to be really good. When I think it's just because there's that void of it after Lawrence. And I think that's why all these guys are kind of shooting up because there was no real number two. And I think one guy, the real number two, and we both haven't mentioned him, is Justin Fields. I think
I'm not a big fan of his.
I'm not either. I think he's been really inconsistent and hasn't kind of found a groove. But I think he's the one guy that from high school has been highly touted in the same breath as Lawrence, and he has played well. He's done what he had to do, and they have gone far. So I trust him, I think, a lot more than really any of the other ones, because the other ones kind of came on late when it really wasn't necessarily their team. I know Trask kind of transformed that team. But like we were just saying, they had Kyle Pitts, who's arguably, the greatest tight end prospect we've ever seen, and you have Kadarius Toney, who's one of the most interesting receivers in the draft as well. So I just, outside of really Fields and Lawrence, and really just Lawrence himself, all of them are seen. There's too much of the programs they were at that I think was responsible for their success.
Yeah. I hope the Steelers don't pick Jones or Traz. I definitely hope they don't trade up to do it. Yeah. And even if they fall to him, I hope they don't do it. To me, you got a guy on Haskins on your roster. To me, I like him better than than those two guys that they would pick. To me, give Haskins a chance before I would waste a pick on them. And so I hope cooler heads and smarter heads prevail. It's going to be our tradition draft night. We order some pizza and wings. I plan on doing that again, and we'll see how we have fun watching the draft and getting shocked when Daniel Jones goes like 6 and our jaw hits the floor, and we'll see what happens this year. But go ahead.
Another interesting thing was Devante Smith weighing at 170, and he said he really doesn't want to gain any weight, and that's what he played at this year. It's just, to me, that's kind of a concerning thing. It's different playing at 171 in college, and 2, when you have 2 number 1 receivers on the other side of the field, you're not getting pressed, you're not being hit as physically because you have to worry about 2 5-stars the other way. So I think with him having the focus, wherever he goes, he's likely going to be the one. I think having that, I'm not the guy that's sitting here saying he's going to get broken too. I think a lot of people are saying he's got no shot. I don't think that's the case, but I think
somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think he's going to take a lot more hits. There's not going to be nearly as much space. I don't think he's just going to be bumped almost every play, and I don't think he's had to deal with that at Bama just because of the talent. So I think it'll be interesting. With him in general, he doesn't blow me away. I think if you watch his film, he's really not a great route runner. He gets separation, but he runs extremely lazy routes, and he kind of curls everything. He's just not sharp. He has probably the best hands in traffic than anyone in the draft, but you kind of have to when you don't get separation. And that's the thing, is if you watch his highlights, he makes phenomenal catches, but he has to. He's not separating really from anyone that I've seen. And when he does, it's typically kind of a scheme separation. So he's a guy with Kyle Pitts kind of there. Kyle Pitts, to me, is a much better receiver than Smith. And you're kind of arguing Smith is the best receiver. And he's a guy that scares me.
Yeah, he went to pro, if I remember right, he went to pro day, didn't participate. He supported his teammate. All accounts, he's a good guy. I think, like you said, he's probably going to get overdrafted, but maybe the weight thing, the not participating in pro day, maybe he does slip down the boards. Maybe some teams and GMs drop him down their rankings and charts.
I don't know why you would come out really and say you plan on staying at 170. It just doesn't.
Well, that was my other point, Jordan. He can say that.
Yeah,
but these teams got nutritionists. These teams got.
But why would you say that? Because that's the thing, is he knows he's likely going to be told, you know what I mean, to add bulk. It's just kind of an odd thing to kind of say, I'm 170. I kind of want to stay there.
Sometimes your mouth talks before your head thinks, right? We all guilty of that. The fact that he said that doesn't really scare me, because if I draft a kid, I get my staff and say, listen, nutritionist, let's get him in the weight room. Let's get him some pounds on him where he doesn't lose any speed. He's just a little more sturdy frame. So that's not a big deal. The fact that he said that. The fact that he weighs 170 is a bigger deal than what he says about being 170.
That's what concerns me. Is he's made do in college, more than made do. He won the Heisman. But I think it's just with so much talent, and you watch, he's really not beating a whole lot of press anyways. But I think the other thing is the receiver class is really deep. I think there's a lot of guys that aren't huge names. Like you have Tylan Wallace and Rondale Moore, who are in other classes might be in your top 3 guys. And you have Kadarius Toney, and there's just a lot of different type of guys.
You might be surprised. He might slip down.
Jalen Waddle is the better receiver than he is, and they're on the same team. And I think really with Waddle going down is really what helped him become the Heisman. I think Waddle doesn't get hurt. I think Waddle coming into the draft is probably the bigger prospect.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a fun draft to see
Yeah.
where these guys go, if they slide, if they move up. Do people overdraft quarterbacks? And I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we always have fun
It seems
at the
like
draft.
quarterbacks always like to get overdraft.
So we're about at our limit. But before we go, I want to put up all our social media stuff. If you're listening, I'll give that information out. You can find us. Let me take that off the screen. All right. So on Twitter, we're at Newman_podcast. On Instagram, we're at Hello Newman's Sports Pod. And Facebook, if you go look, you just search Hello Newman's Sports will come up. So if you do Hello Newman Sports, you'll find us on most of the social medias. Give us a follow, like, subscribe. If you want to see this, if you're not seeing the show live, we're Tuesdays, 8 p.m. for about an hour every Tuesday. That's Eastern time, by the way. If you don't catch us live, but you still want to see our ugly mugs, if you go to Sports Card Nation Podcast on YouTube, subscribe there. That's where this video gets uploaded. But if you don't want to see our ugly mugs, and I get it, you can listen to us on any podcast platform. Hello Newman's Sports Pod, and then we upload it Wednesday, and it's there until the next show on Tuesday night. Well, it's there forever, but it's fresh until the next show on Tuesday night. So with that being said, for Jordan, I'm John. We'll see you in 7 days, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Take care.
Palindor.